Om Jnanatimidandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yatapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gora Tushe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. We will continue proceeding. How did everyone go? Up to text 30, I think it was 30 something. Yes, so I'll just share my screen and we can resume going. Oh, Shree's turned the camera on. Poor Shree. She had to attend a class of mine last night and then one this morning. I think I wouldn't wish that much of my talking on my worst enemy. Okay. So I'll just recap from last week. So we were going over the second chapter, right? The second chapter, it begins with Krishna's response, right, to Arjuna's very eloquently set forth argumentation. Arjuna's very eloquently set forth reasoning. We were talking about how Krishna, he very much chastises Arjuna's reasonings. He very much chastises them in the first text, right? The first text is very much condemning everything that he's said so far. So we covered that, and then we went into the purports. The purports are very nectarian. As we know, Madhusudan was used again, but this time by Sanjaya in order to discourage the increasing hopes of Dhritarashtra. Then we discussed what is the central issue, right? What is the source of Arjuna's illusion? How can we consider him illusion, right? When a lot of what he says seems to be right, even by Prabhupada's standards, right? Prabhupada himself is saying in some purports, what's soft-hearted compassion, right? But Prabhupada is also making this central point because Prabhupada more often says that this is all miserly weak-heartedness, right? So how do we understand this? It's because ultimately Arjuna, he is making all of these points because he is calculating in terms of me and mine, right? And we're going to discuss that as we get into Krishna's teachings today, right? Why is this an issue? How is this an issue? How does this happen? Because it all has to do with the soul. And I'm sure you've all pieced together that the Atman, the self, the soul, is a very central theme for the initial part of chapter 2, right? And then we talked a little bit from the nectarian purport. We talked about the 6 opulences, which are really a way of defining what Bhagavan means. What does God mean, right? These are I contrasted them against omnipotence, right? Which is what we're normally, when somebody asks you what God is, we normally think all powerful, all knowing. And again, these are good, but our first step when we are thinking in terms of the Bhagavad-gītā, our first mental step is, he is all strong, right? He's all famous. He's all wealthy, right? Like this. And then we went through them again. Please remember these. Yeah. So we will keep on going then. And I have this text here, but when it becomes appropriate, we'll get to it. So we discussed that, right? After Krishna says in text 2. So then we have text 3, which is like a slap in the face, right, for a kshatriya. The meter here is a much longer meter. You might notice it's not the regular da 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 like that, right? It's a little bit longer. This is the trishtub meter as compared to the anushtub meter. And normally when we find it in poetry, it means intensity, right? We're building up to something. You'll often find it when something majestic is happening, when something intense is happening, especially in poetry like the Bhagavad-gītā, where the Sanskrit is a little simple, right? The Bhagavad-gītā Sanskrit, if you'd study 1 year of Sanskrit, you'd be able to read the Sanskrit pretty confidently, right? If you studied like 5 years of Sanskrit, you would still struggle with Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Sanskrit is very complex, but Bhagavad-gīta's Sanskrit is relatively simple, which makes it interesting then when it does do something like changing meter. It's rather clear what's going on here, right? So we're meant to carry that across. The Bhagavad-gītā is a Gita, right? It is a song, right? It is a poem. And so with Shastra, it's very significant when meter is used. It's not an accident, right? It's not, as I said before, that, oh, well, we've just got too many words, so we'll change the way we're writing this, right? Poetry is very intentional. And so there's always a reason when a meter gets changed. Even in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, but Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam uses so many meters, it's a little bit hard sometimes. So we have here text 3. And what does Krishna say, right? He says, O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemies, right? So what is he saying? Kshudram hridaya dorbalyam, right? Give up this weakness of the heart, right? Hridaya dorbalyam. I won't get into this too much because I do want to get through these chapters at a reasonable pace. We are spending a lot of time, actually, and I do want to clarify this before we really dive into today's lesson. We are spending a lot of time on the first chapter, also on the second chapter. It feels like at this rate, we're not going to get through the Bhagavad-gītā on time. But I was speaking to Ganesham Prabhu, and he was saying that this always happens. The first 3 chapters take a long while because we're establishing a lot of fundamental points of philosophy that are built upon throughout the rest of the Bhagavad-gītā. Once we've really discussed a lot of these issues, a lot of these topics, the next few chapters will be able to go through at a much faster pace because we won't be stopping to discuss, the 6 opulences of Krishna or stuff like that, the nature of the soul and all these things. These things will all be given, and therefore we'll move at a faster pace. So don't worry at the pace we're going at, we will be done on time. We're not behind schedule or anything. So he says, Kshudram hridaya dorbalyam, which is rather famous. I don't know if any of you know, where do we otherwise hear hridaya dorbalyam in our philosophy? Does anyone know? This is a tricky question. So is it ringing any bells? So hridaya dorbalyam is one of the anarthas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives a list of 4 anarthas. This list changes depending on which text you're reading, but at least in some texts, he gives a list of 4 anarthas. Asatrishna, thirsting after material things. Tattva vibhrama, having philosophical misconceptions. And hridaya, aparad, offenses, and hridaya dorbalyam, weakness of the heart, right? So this is an anartha. An anartha, as we know, is an imperfection in the heart, right? Artha means something of value, right? It means wealth. And anartha, therefore, means something of not much value at all. Ironically enough, artha, wealth, is often one of the biggest anarthas, things of no value that hold on back. So hridaya dorbalyam is one of the central anarthas in our philosophy. And so Krishna, he's mentioning it. He's saying, what is this? What is this, right? That is past. What is this weakness of heart? And imagine for a kshatriya, we all know the valiant, brave kshatriyas in the battlefield. It's very insulting to say you have a weak heart, right? Krishna, he also says, impotence, right? Klaibyam, you're impotent, right? Like a eunuch. So impotence also is very, very insulting to a Kshatriya. Because Kshatriyas, they're filled with passion, you know, they have these big royal families. And so Arjuna, he's feeling rather insulted. And Krishna, he's doing this on purpose, right? Krishna, he's not saying this in order to insult Arjuna, but he's just trying to really shake him up. He's saying, you know, what are you thinking? What is this that has come over you? But then, what do we hear? Parantapa, right? Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Parantapa is mentioned, and who can tell me, what does Srila Prabhupada say? What is the significance of Parantapa in this text? It's in the purport, if you go through. It is because he is a Kshatriya, right? He is a slayer of enemies. And so this is being mentioned so that we don't get any idea that Arjuna will not fight, right? It is mentioned that he is the fighter of his enemies, right? It is mentioned that he is somebody who will fight. And therefore, Dhritarashtra, who is listening, don't get your hopes up, right? Because by now, Dhritarashtra's heart is beating in his chest from excitement, right? This is all going to pay off. And so Parantapa is another mention, right? It's for him to know that actually, no, Arjuna will fight. And as we get deeper into the Bhagavad-gītā, we'll see that actually, irregardless of if Krishna spoke or not, Arjuna would have fought. The whole reason Arjuna is not fighting is because Krishna has bewildered him, right? So, like this, we are preventing the happiness of Dhritarashtra. So then, we continue going on. And then what do we hear? Text 5. Text 4. Now, Arjuna speaks, right? Katam Bhishma maham sankhe dronam cha madhusudana ishubhi pratiyotsyami pujarhav arisudana. Maybe Rani Mataji, would you like to read out the English?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counterattack with arrows in battlement like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship?
Very nice. So now Arjuna, he's responding, because what did Krishna say, right? He said, oh, you eunuch, all of these things, right? He's making all these points. He says, oh, Partha, right? Partha, this is referring to his ancestors, right? This is referring, oh, son of Pritha, you know, you're coming from such a noble lineage and you're acting like this, like a eunuch with so much weak heart, right? So Arjuna right now, he's thinking, well, even though he's completely lost, he's saying, I'll give it one more chance. I'm going to defend my position. I'm going to say, no, I am very innocent. And what does he say? Oh, killer of enemies, oh, killer of Madhu, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? We will find something interesting that's mentioned here, and Prabhupada, he touches upon it in the purport. It seems a little redundant, right? At one point, Arjuna, he calls Krishna Madhusudana. In the next moment, he calls him Arisudana, right? Twice, he said, it makes sense if he's calling him once, right? He's saying killer of the Madhu demon. Yeah, that makes sense. That clarifies some points, maybe. But then he's saying Arisudana, killer of enemies, right? That's very redundant. And again, we should not think that that Arjuna is just thinking, well, I'm having to speak in a poetic meter now, so I've got to throw another name in. There's actually a very strong significance that is given to this. Because Madhusudana, right? Madhusudana, Madhu not only refers to the Madhu demon, but Krishna actually has an ancestor named Madhu, right? So Arjuna, he's saying, you are Madhusudana, right? The killer of the Madhu demon, because you are Arisudana, right? The killer of your enemies. You are not the killer of your family. You are not the killer of your friends, right? You wouldn't kill Madhu, your ancestor. Your name Madhusudana doesn't mean the slayer of Madhu, the ancestor of Krishna, right? It means Madhusudana, the killer of Ari, right? Your demon, your enemies, right? You are the killer of the Madhu demon. And therefore, Arjuna, he's making this point, right? You wouldn't do this, then why are you encouraging me to fight in this war, right? And therefore, Prabhupada, he says, would Krishna ever attack his own grandfather, Ugrasen, or his teacher, Sandipani Muni, right? And now we can wonder, right? Because Arjuna then, next he says, it would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are my superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. So this point is very significant because what does he say? Even though they are desiring, worldly enjoyment. And I want to stress this because this is in relation to Bhishma and Drona, right? Because we were discussing before, why is Bhishma on the side of the Kauravas, right? Why is Drona on the side of the Kauravas? Who can tell me? This is one of the potential questions. I doubt it'll be in the test, not to give you a hint of which questions I'm putting in, but still, it's good for us to know. Who can tell me? Srinivas Prabhu. Yes, you already unmuted. Jai.
Yes, because Bhishma was obedient to the even Bhishma and Drona. Yeah, Bhishma was obedient to the whoever is sitting on the throne of the Kauravas, that Hastinapur, that is one of his vow to protect the throne of the Hastinapur. And Drona, actually, when we see that as when Ashwadhama was towards, he is the friend of Duryodhan, and because of his attachment to his son, he is obliged to be on the side of the Kauravas.
Jai, very nice. Okay, somebody has said something in the chat. Also relationship, yes.
Probably, I was
yes.
just saying like the relationship of Bhishma with Krishna is one in which he wanted to face him on the battle.
Yes, there's also that reason. So we find here, right? And why did Drona want to fight, right? Obviously, he's got the relationship with his son. Also, Bhishma has that relationship. We'll get to another interesting reason why, but first, we will touch upon something. What Krishna implicitly has made this argument, right? From the Mahābhārata. Who would like to say the Sanskrit? Let's have Tarun Prabhu. Would you like to say the Sanskrit?
Gurorapi avalipattasya karyam ajanata utpattha pratipannasya parityago vidhiyate.
Jai, very nice, very nice. And maybe then, Shavina Mataji, would you like to read out the English?
One should reject the guru who is proud, does not know proper behavior, who becomes engaged in sinful life.
So here we have this principle from the Mahābhārata, right? And this is the underlying principle that's being referenced here, right? And do you still maintain a guru? And of course, Prabhupada, he references this in the purport, right? He begins talking about who is qualified to be a guru and who is qualified to be rejected as a guru. And we may wonder, do these personalities line up with that? And then we find later on in the Mahābhārata, we find this text, right? This text was spoken by Bhishma, if I remember correctly. And it says, Arthasya purusho daso dasastvartho nakasyachit. Iti satyam maharaja badho smyarthena kauravaihi. Right? Man is a servant of wealth. Wealth is not a servant of anyone. O king, I have become bound by the wealth of the Kauravas. Right? So here we find Bhishma, he's making exactly the point that it would qualify one to be rejected as a guru, right? He's completely just comfortable with wealth, right? He's completely just comfortable. Oh, well, you know, I get their money, and ultimately man is made for money, right? So this is the point that he's making. Now, I want to touch on this just slightly before we continue ahead and we dive into this deep philosophy of the second chapter. And the point here is there might be some confusion in people's minds, right? Because what do we hear from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Maybe we can have Uma Mataji. Would you like to read out the Sanskrit? I think Uma Mataji is AWOL, so we will. Nandan Prabhu, would you like to read out the Sanskrit?
Swayambhur Narada Shambhu Kumara Kapilo Manuhu Pralado Janako Bhishmo Valir Vayasakir Vayam.
Jai. And then maybe Vidhi Mataji, would you like to read out the English?
Sure, Prabhu. Lord Brahma, Bhagwan Narad, Lord Shiva, the four Kumaras, Lord Kapila, the son of Devhuti, Swambhavu Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, grandfather Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, Sukhdev Goswami, and I myself, spoken by Yamraj.
Sorry, Prabhuji, I think you called me, but somehow there was an issue with the...
That's all right, no problem. Next one you can read, okay?
Yes.
So what is the point here? So this list, does anyone know who this list is? Who is this list of?
12 mahajans.
Yes, the mahajans, the great personalities, right? All of these great personalities. So, and who was on there? Grandfather Bhishma. So how do we understand the great Mahajana, grandfather Bhishma? He is also being described as lusting after money, right? So we can understand that Maharaj Bhishma, he's in a similar category as Arjuna, right? This is a pastime that he is cooperating with. Now, why would he be doing this? First, we should understand that sometimes if a personality will do something apparently wrong in order for a greater good, if it's part of a pastime of Krishna, right? Shankaracharya is an example we will touch upon later today, right? Shankaracharya is none other than Shiva, who is also on this list. And what does Shankaracharya preach? God has no personality, God has no form, right? Stuff like this, we are all one, right? All of these sort of ideas that are incorrect, right? And yet, he has done this for a purpose and for a reason. So in the same way, Bhishma, he has done the same. And there's quite a few reasons that can be given. The reasons I'll give aren't exhaustive. They're not all of them, but there are some reasons that we can think of. One is to teach us all the dangers of jana sangaha, right? To teach us all the dangers of associating with worldly people, right? It's to teach us all the dangers of having intimately breaking bread, right? Intimately sharing meals with crooked-minded people, right? This diverts us, right? So Bhishma, he's giving a very nice teaching example to understand this point. Yes, as Katyayani Prabhu, and I mean, I always say Katyayani Prabhu, as Katyayani Mataji and Srinivasa Prabhu, as they've written in the chat, Bhishma wanted to see the chivalry rasa of Krishna on the battlefield. That is correct. That is another reason. Even deeper, we can also think that Krishna wanted to taste this rasa. Krishna wanted to experience fighting in the battlefield, and therefore Bhishma has reciprocated this, right? The rasa of being the chivalrous hero, right? So on the one hand, Bhishma wanted to see it. On the other hand, Krishna wanted to taste it, and so Bhishma facilitated it. Another reason why is Krishna comes for what purpose? Everyone knows this famous text, right? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, right? Apyattanam dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham, and then, So then, if Krishna has come to reestablish religion, this involves what? Vinashaya chatushkritam, right? The annihilation of the demonic people. So Bhishma, he has done this because a lot of demons get taken out in order of the Kurukshetra war, right? So this is another reason why. Another reason why is because Bhishma, he wanted to allow Krishna to manifest his role as Bhakta Vatsala, right? Because because Bhishma wants to fight Krishna so that Krishna will break his vow. Krishna made the vow, we all know, not to fight anyone on the battlefield, right? And yet at the end, he goes to fight Bhishma. Why? In order to serve his devotee Arjuna, right? So therefore we can see Bhishma, he is given the wonderful opportunity for Krishna to show that Krishna will break his own promises, right? In order to uphold the vows and promises of his devotees, right? So there we find this as well. And lastly, and in our case, most importantly, Bhishma, he has gone along with this in order to manifest the pastime of the Bhagavad-gītā being spoken, right? So all of these reasons are there. So we sort of shouldn't think that Bhishma is some conditioned personality, right? We shouldn't think that he is imperfect. He is very much glorified by the greater Shastras, but there are many reasons why. In the same way that Arjuna, he has been bewildered in terms of pastime, in the same way Bhishma, he is the same. So we will keep going on. So then Arjuna, he says, nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we killed the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live, yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. And then he says this famous text, right? And the reason why I've put this up on the slides is this is for most of you, or for all of you, your first shloka for memorization, right? Now, some of you may already know the shlok, but I want to emphasize this. All of you, you should be, this is the shlok that will be memorized, right? So we should be practicing this and getting comfortable with this text, right? So I will have, let's hear. Jaswant Prabhu, would you like to recite the shlok?
Yes, Prabhu. Karpanya dosho pahatasvabaha prachami tvam dharmas samudracheta yachreyasyan nishitam bruhitan me shishyaste hamsadi mam tvam prapannam.
Jai. So I want to emphasize again, just briefly. Please start memorizing your shlokas, please. It is not difficult, right? It's not that you will fail if you start memorizing them the week before, but it is just not that fun, right? Because then you're cramming. So please, if you haven't already started memorizing the shlokas, we will be finishing this module in a few months, right? So you still have lots of time, but still, please start memorizing them now, right? Even if you already know this one, start memorizing ahead, so it's all very comfortable. Also, try your best again to memorize the English. And here we have this, right? Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. The purport Srila Prabhupada has to this text is probably my favorite purport in this whole chapter. It's very, very nectarian. It's very, very wonderful. It's very, very long as well, at least for a Gita purport. After you've read the purport for the first text in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, no purport is short anymore because that purport's a whole chapter in of itself. But still, in terms of Bhagavad-gītā, this is a long purport, but it's a very sweet purport. Because here we find, right, Arjuna, what is he doing? He is approaching Krishna as his guru, right? Arjuna, he is approaching Krishna as his guru and he is surrendering to Krishna as his guru because this is essential before we understand spiritual knowledge. And we will touch upon that a little bit more later on when we touch on the major themes of this section. But Arjuna, he's saying, I am confused about my duty. I've lost all composure. I don't know what I'm doing. And because I don't know what I'm doing, I'm asking you, please guide me, right? Here we find Arjuna, the archetypal disciple. Often people will say, I'm searching for guru, right? His Grace Madhavananda Prabhu loves to make this point, and it's a very relevant point. People will say, I'm searching for a guru, who is right for me, stuff like this, right? So, and people will go and they'll say, who is the right guru for me, right? And they'll look, oh, he ticks this box, he ticks that box, but nah, not for me, right? His kirtan isn't the type of kirtan I have. People might say, or even if they might say something less silly, they'll go tick this box, that box. And to a degree, those are there as safeguards, but that's not the central question, actually. The central question isn't who is the appropriate guru for me, right? The appropriate question isn't who is a qualified guru. The appropriate question is, am I a qualified disciple, right? Am I qualified for this, right? In fact, there are more than enough qualified devotees to at least bring one up to some level of spiritual advancement, right? More than enough. Krishna, he is everywhere, and Krishna cannot exist without his devotees, right? So if Krishna is everywhere, then his devotees are everywhere as well, right? The question isn't, is there somebody who can act as my guru? The question is, am I somebody who can act as a disciple, right? And so Arjuna, he is very nicely showing this, right? So he's saying, I am lost, I'm confused, I don't know what's happening, right? And deep down, that's all of us, right? We all have this existential confusion, this existential dread in some way or another. And Arjuna, he is abandoning all of the ego we might have, right? All of the resistance we might have. And he is saying, now please guide me. We will discuss this a little bit deeper as we go along, but this text is very, very important. Now, here is something very, very interesting. Because Krishna, he does not instantly start instructing Arjuna. Does he, right? The next text isn't then Krishna saying, okay, my dear disciple, right? Okay, my dear disciple, please listen to my instructions, right? No. What is the next text? Maybe, who have I not asked? Uma Mataji. Uma Mataji,
Yes,
would you like to read
yes.
out the Sanskrit?
For 2.7, Prabhuji?
For 2.8, please.
Okay, I can see 2.7, Prabhuji. on
Oh,
the
I mean,
screen.
do you have your Gita with you?
Yes, Prabhuji. The Sanskrit, Prabhuji?
Yes, the
Okay.
Sanskrit.
Okay. Nahi prapashyami mama panudhyat yakchokam uchoshanam indriyanam avapya bhumav ashapatnam ridham rajam suranam api chadipatyam.
Jai. Very nice, very nice.
Okay.
And then Alex, would you like to read out the English translation?
Which sloka, sorry?
2.8. I'll go on to the next slide, even though it's the next point, because I think it's confusing everyone having 2.7 on the screen.
So, do you want the Sanskrit?
No, the English. We just have the Sanskrit.
So I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it, even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven.
Jai, right. So Arjuna, he then continues to make this point. Why does he continue to make this point? Our acaryas, they've clarified that actually Krishna, he is not speaking. When Arjuna makes this point, dharma samudha chetana, shadi mam tvam prapannam, right? Please instruct me, I'm your surrendered disciple. Arjuna is saying all these things and Krishna remains silent, right? And why does Krishna remain silent? Krishna, he's testing Arjuna, right? He's trying to tease out, is he actually qualified to be my disciple, right? Is he actually sincere in being my disciple? Some acaryas write that actually Krishna, he's saying, oh, Arjuna, you've just given such a wonderful talk about the nature of ethics and everything. Why should I teach you anything? Krishna's almost being sarcastic. He's saying, oh, Arjuna, you already know all of the answers to these questions. You've given us such a wonderful lecture on logic and ethics. How could I teach you anything, Arjuna, right? Another point that he's making is he's saying, oh, Arjuna, I'm your friend. I'm not your guru. This will be awkward, right? Tamal Krishna Goswami, his brother, became a devotee, right? And yet Tamal Krishna Goswami, he told his brother to take shelter under Giriraj Maharaj, not under himself, because it would just be, it just would be odd, right? It would be an odd dynamic. Now that's not necessarily always the case. Like you can see examples, right, where this isn't the case, but often it is the case, right? So Krishna, he's also making this point. This would be odd. I'm your friend, right? I'm not your guru. You know, this will be an odd dynamic. And of course, the other point is, how can I instruct you? Oh, Arjuna, you're clearly so smart, right? It reminds me of one class by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Radhanath Maharaj, he gave this wonderful class, which goes without saying, almost a tautology. If Radhanath Maharaj is giving a class, it will be a wonderful class. And at the end, somebody asked a question, right? And their question went on for 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. I remember they were going on, Maharaj, in Ramayan, this happens, that happens. And then he's asking this long question. And at the end, Radhanath Maharaj, he says, thank you, Prabhu, for your wonderful Bhagavatam class. Does anyone have any questions? So it's a little bit like this. Krishna, he's almost teasing Arjuna, right? By not saying anything. He's saying, you've just given us such a wonderful explanation of the truth. How could I teach you anything? From where do the acaryas find these intricacies between the lines? So this is the importance of their mood, right? Their meditation, right? Because the acaryas, actually, you know, this is a long answer. Please remember this question, and I'll get back to it when we have questions. No, don't apologize. I should have saved it for later. I thought I could answer it simply, but it's actually a long answer. So a wonderful question, though. I love stuff like that. So we'll touch upon in the questions. So they're pulling out these meanings. So then Krishna says, in response to this, right? Oh, no, Krishna, I was putting forth those reasonings. I know you're saying, oh, I know you're almost teasing me, right? But I'm saying I actually can find no means to drive away this grief, right? I can't find any means. Even though I've given all these reasons, deep down, I have no idea how to resolve this issue, right? There is no way. The other meaning then, if we take it as, oh, Krishna is saying, you're my friend, he's saying, I can find no means. I don't know anyone else who can do this, right? Maybe you're my friend. Maybe it'll be awkward, but who else can there be to help me? Right? So these are the two meanings we can add. This is why Krishna, he is not replying instantly. He is testing, is there sincerity in Arjuna's heart? And then we hear Arjuna's final words before the Bhagavad-gītā, the Gita Upanishad itself properly begins. What do we hear? Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva hrishikesham gudakesha parantapa na yotsya iti govindam uktvatushnim babhuvaha. Again, parantapa. Sanjaya, he's just making it clear, Dhritarashtra, stop getting so excited. It's not going to turn out how you're wanting it to turn out, right? Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. Right? He falls silent. These are the last words. Now instruct me, O Krishna. Teach me what to do in this very, very difficult situation. Actually, Arjuna, he has spoken the truth, right? He will not fight. At the end, as we go through the Gita, we'll find out who is the one who will actually be fighting. Actually, it is Krishna, right? Krishna is Janardhan, the maintainer of all life and the destroyer of all life, right? So Arjuna will learn to simply act as an instrument in Krishna's hands, right? So actually Arjuna, he has indirectly said the truth, right? He will not fight, right? It will not be him who is fighting, right? He will simply be an instrument in the hands of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Furthermore, we hear again, right? Our favorite names. What does Gurakesh mean? Anyone can unmute. I won't call out a name, just somebody.
Conqueror of sleep.
Yes, conqueror of sleep. And what does Hrishikesh mean? Somebody else. Again, just unmute yourself and tell me. What does Hrishikesh mean?
Conqueror of senses.
Yes.
Owner of senses or conqueror of senses?
Yeah, master of senses. We can also say conqueror. Master of senses is probably better, but either one works, right? Both work. Both are good, right? So here we find, before, why do we mention these names? Because Hrishikesh, the master of all senses, and therefore the master of the whole world, he is being mastered by his devotee. But now it's being brought up again, because now Krishna is again returning to his position as the master of all, and he is now the master of Arjuna. Now he is returning to his position, and he is going to instruct Arjuna, right? Now we have these names being brought up again because the dynamic has changed. There is a rasa sandhyam. if any of you would like the Sanskrit term. Rasa sandhyam means when the mood switches. You know, we can know sandhya means like a transition, right? It means a transitionary period. So the rasa sandhyam is when the rasa is shifting. And that's what we find in text 9 and 10. The rasa switches. As Nandan Prabhu liked to point out, no more friendly talks, right? And this is where that transition properly happens. Here we have the rasa sandhyam. And why do we see it? A very sweet shloka. Tam uvacha Hrishikesha prahasan iva Bharata senayor ubhayor madhye vishidantam idam vachaha. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Right. So now this is it. This is literally it. And then at text 11, the Gita Upanishad begins. Right. At that point, the famous Upanishad, Bhagavad-gītā begins. Krishna will begin his philosophical deliberations. But there's one point I want to focus on quickly. And that is a point that is often mentioned by people. There's something interesting that Krishna is doing. What is he doing? What is he doing? What's some interesting thing?
Smiling.
Smiling, yes, that's it. Krishna, he is smiling. And again, our acaryas have brought out so much meaning in the smile, and I think the meanings are very relevant, very important. One meaning, just tying on what I was saying, is it's rasa sandhyam. Arjuna, he is Krishna's friend, and yet Krishna, he is about to take the role of the spiritual master, which is more of a vatsalya role, right? More of a parental, guiding, masterful role, right? Like a parent, right? So because of this, Krishna, he's smiling to sort of transition through, right? The friendliness, it's sort of receding away, and now a stern parental role is about to come out. So that smile is signifying, right? The rasa sandhyam. Another reason, and this is one of the reasons, this is a reason Prabhupada gives, it's very rasic, is one of my favorites. Krishna, he's smiling, he's thinking, this is my friend and he's surrendering to me as a guru. What's going on? This is confusing. Krishna, he's smiling. He's thinking, Arjuna's my friend. He's not my disciple. This is a very awkward situation I've gotten myself into, right? So Krishna, he's smiling, right? Arjuna is my friend, not my disciple. Why is he surrendering to me in this majestic way, right? This is another reason. Our previous acaryas actually give their reason is a little less sweet. It's rather funny. The reason that they give is that Krishna, he's laughing at how bad Arjuna's arguments are, which I always find funny to read. Krishna is just excited to speak the Gita. That is actually also a reason that is also given, right? Krishna, he's excited, right? And why is he excited to speak the Gita, right? Why is he excited? Because Krishna, now he's acting as the guru, right? And the guru is always very happy, very excited to see their disciple and to impart transcendental knowledge onto them. So he is very excited to speak this transcendental knowledge. Furthermore, as the guru, Krishna, he's also smiling because he's thinking now Arjuna, he has reached the point where his spiritual life is about to become perfect, right? And the guru is very pleased by this. His Holiness Vishnu Jana Maharaj. I can never tell if most people have heard of Vishnu Jana Maharaj or not, right? Can we get a raise of hands? Who knows of Vishnu Jana Maharaj? So Vishnu Jana Maharaj is one of the, like, we often hear, we all know Janavi Harrison, Indra Prabhu, right? We will all hear of these individuals, and what are they famous for? What are they famous for? Who can tell us?
Kirtans, Prabhuji.
Kirtans. Vishnu Jana Maharaj was the original, right? He's the original ISKCON Kirtaniya. All of the original tunes, like, and everything, Vishnu Jana Maharaj, he would he was like the original. He left his body very early on, before even Srila Prabhupada did, right? But he's had a huge impact, right? Huge impact on ISKCON. He was there on the Radha Damodar traveling party, right? The original Sankirtan traveling bus, which was developed. He was there, right? So Vishnu Jana Maharaj, he's very significant and very deep. When you listen to his classes, even though you think he didn't even have access to like all of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and yet such deep realizations. You can listen to his classes, and it really proves that just through the execution of devotional service, we can learn so much, right? So Vishnujan Maharaj, he says this very sweet thing. He says that the distance that we have traveled is far, far greater than the distance we have left to go now that we are under the shelter of our spiritual master. It's a very nice, very sweet realization, right? We have traveled so far, right? Time immemorial, anadi, right? That's how long we've been in this material world. So long we've traversed through all of these forms of life, right? All of these millions of forms of life. So we've been everything. We've experienced everything, right? We've experienced the greatest joys. We've experienced the greatest sufferings. At one point, we were Brahmas, you know, the greatest being in the material world. At other points, we were rocks and snails, right? We've experienced everything that there is to experience. So much experience, and ultimately all of it suffering, right? And yet after all that experience, once one comes under the shelter of the spiritual master, there is so little distance left to go. Again, we have traveled so far, and yet the destination is soon at hand. This is the realization of Vishnujan Maharaj. And this is why Krishna is smiling, right? Because the spiritual master, when they see a disciple properly surrendered to them, they see an individual who has so little distance left to go, right? It is an optimistic smile. So this is another dimension to Krishna's smile. There's even more dimensions. I'll touch on two more and then we'll keep on going so as to not exhaust it. You can really go hard with these sort of significances. My spiritual master was once giving a class on Putana's pastime. And he spoke, I think, for half an hour nonstop about the significance of Krishna closing his eye before drinking from Putana, right? He spoke half an hour, all the different symbolism and significance. So we can speak a lot about these things. But there's even deeper meanings, and I'm relating it to the ones that have come up. Maybe Sankarsan Das Adhikari was introduced to Krishna consciousness by him. I'm not too sure. Could very well be. I'm just assuming that was a question from the question mark. If it's a statement of fact, then Haribol, right? All glories to Vishnujan Maharaj. Either way, all glories to Vishnujan Maharaj. Please, after this class, go listen to some of his kirtans. I'll send some in the WhatsApp group. Really amazing kirtans. On Janmashtami, it's said that all night he would be singing the kirtan before midnight. And then once midnight hit, he would run, he would eat 1 grain of rice to break his fast, and then he would go back and sing kirtan for the rest of the night, right? So great personality, Vishnujan Maharaj. Anyways, we'll keep on going. So with the smile of Krishna, also Krishna is smiling because he's trying to make it clear, right? I'm chastising you, but I'm also your friend, right? I'm chastising you for your own good, right? He's trying to establish there's a friendly mood here. And again, we find this with the guru, right? Sometimes the guru will speak heavily to us, right? But ideally, it's not out of nastiness. If it is out of nastiness, then that person is not a bona fide guru, right? So he's trying to maintain, look, I'm speaking these heavy words, but I do care for you. I'm your friend, and now your spiritual master, right? And then the last reason we'll take is that he's also just smiling to encourage Arjuna. Acting as a spiritual master, we hear Srila Prabhupada would encourage his disciples so much, right? Often Prabhupada would say very encouraging things, right? And he's doing this in order to encourage Arjuna. Because why is Arjuna in this situation? Everyone surrenders to a spiritual master because they say, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And that's a painful thing to realize. It's a thing we all have to realize, but it's still nevertheless a painful thing to realize. And so Krishna, he's smiling to Arjuna. He's reassuring Arjuna. Don't worry, it's all right, right? It's all right. We're going to go through this, so to speak, right? It's all right. I'm comforting you. It's all uphill from here, right? It's a comforting smile, right? So he's comforting Arjuna. So there's all of these significances of the smile. We'll touch on a few points though from this chapter before then we have a 5-minute break, and then we discuss the Gita Upanishad. So Arjuna's qualifications as a student. We find here I have on this slide that Arjuna, he is showing us again what it is like, what the ideal student in Krishna consciousness is like. I won't read all of these out because the slide is right here, right? But we find throughout the whole first chapter, Arjuna, he has shown us, right, the build-up, right, the qualities that are important to be a disciple, right? These are all important qualities to have, and these are all the qualities that allow him to be a disciple of Krishna. So we'll keep on going. So there's a few points that just need to be made, and I won't discuss them comprehensively right now, because this topic will just keep on coming up again and again and again throughout the Bhagavad-gītā. There's quite a few topics that will just keep coming up again and again and again. Guru Tattva, the soul, bhakti. These topics come up again and again and again, so we aren't going to comprehensively discuss them each time they come. We'll gradually discuss them bit by bit. But Guru Tattva is very important, right? And that's what the Nectarian purport that Srila Prabhupada has in 2.7 discusses. I'd very much encourage everyone to just reread 2.7 in their own time after this class, just because it's an amazing purport, right? Guru Tattva comes up a lot. Prabhupada says, right, that once we have realized the confusions of this material life, once we have experienced those, then naturally the solution is the spiritual master, right? And how do we know this, right? How do we begin our worship of the spiritual master every morning? Again, if we get up on time, right? Samsara dava nalalita loka, right? This world is like a forest fire, and the spiritual master, right, he is extinguishing that forest fire, right? This is how we understand Guru Tattva, right? We are all in a predicament, and Guru is Krishna's solution, right? Guru is Krishna's solution to the predicament, the sufferings, the pains, the worries, the issues of material life, which is again why it is so significant that Arjuna's problems are so difficult, right? Arjuna is not having an easy issue to solve. He's having a difficult issue to solve. And that's why he is so relevant to all of us, because we all have a very difficult issue to solve. At the root of it is our material condition, but it gets expressed in all sorts of difficult situations with lots of pain and lots of suffering. And Guru Tattva, again, is that solution, right? Furthermore, though, we shouldn't think that this surrender is, I mean, in one sense, it is blind, right? In one sense, because we should be fully surrendered, right, to the spirituals. But on the other hand, Prabhupada does mention, right, that one can reject a spiritual master. Now, that's a very heavy topic and not a light one to discuss. We'll discuss it more fully on the other end of the break. But just to clarify that the relationship between guru and disciple is not something that gets rushed into, right? And it's not something that is meant to facilitate a toxic dynamic, right? It's not one that facilitates a toxic dynamic because it's not meant to be adding to the forest fire of material life, right? Your relationship with your guru should be extinguishing that forest fire, not igniting it more. So sometimes people, they have this idea, right? Oh, I need to get initiated because I don't want to be called Bhakta Bob anymore. So I'm going to get initiated. I'll get initiated from someone. And now I've rushed into it, and now I'm bound from life. And now I'm messed up because so on and so forth, right? People will have all these sort of issues, and I think they're important to discuss. And we will discuss them in light of these purports. But first, we will have a 5-minute break. I'll see you all on the other side, and we'll have an activity in the second half. So I'll see you all at, what's the time? I'll see you all at let's say 4 past 11.